Good evening and welcome to the October 13th Grafton School Committee meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Grafton School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by visiting the Zoom link found on the Grafton Town page. We will need to take attendance and announce all the committee members and school officials on the call, and we'll have a roll call vote for all votes. So I will start with a roll call. Jennifer Conley. I can't hear you, John. Want to try again?
Jennifer Connolly here.
There we go. Great. Thank you. Elizabeth Spinney.
Here.
Amy Marr.
Amy Marr here.
Rahul Rati.
Rahul Rati here.
James Dewar.
James Dewar here.
Annabelle Weber.
Here.
All right. And James Cummings.
Jay Cummings here.
Tracy Kalo.
Tracy Kalo here.
Kristen Gasper.
Kristen Gasper here.
And Nita Patel.
Here.
Did I get everybody? Excellent. All right. As we have been doing for the past months, I guess, public comment is currently suspended. Our Q&A is still open for questions only. We will not be sharing comments during our meeting. We ask our viewers at home to continue the same decorum they would use during an in-person meeting. And then we ask that you hold your questions until after the committee has had time to discuss. And I'll have our clerk, Amy Marr, monitor your questions. We will allow one question, one follow-up per person during our meeting. And any question that we don't get to, we will answer via email or on our website. And then we retain the right to ask anyone who's unable to act appropriately to leave our meeting. We always invite you to reach out to us via our school email accounts, which are posted on our website, and our GPS budget coronavirus Facebook page. And it is my pleasure to introduce our newest student rep, Annabelle Weber. Annabelle, welcome. We're so glad to have you. And we were hoping you could give a little bit of background about yourself to introduce yourself to the committee and to the town and the school district. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of the committee this year. I'm a junior at Grafton High, and I play a lot of sports. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Annabelle before Liz?
What sports do you play, Annabelle?
In the fall, I play field hockey, and I do indoor track in the winter, and I play lacrosse in the spring.
That is a lot of sports. Any other questions? Jen? Can't hear you.
So welcome aboard and thank you for doing this and joining us. So we appreciate your time. Can you hear?
Yeah, that was good. All right, Jen was having a little bit of audio issues, so we might have to ask her to repeat a couple times. Well, Annabelle, just follow along. If you have any questions, we usually try to just raise our hands just to keep it civil. But yeah, feel free to jump in whenever. James is a great role model. No question is dumb. We encourage and we want to hear about your experience as a student. If you have concerns that people bring to you, please share them. You're a full member of this committee. Unfortunately, you don't have voting power, but we also do always like input. So when we're discussing, feel free to discuss, and we're really glad to have you. And it's a 2-year position because it is a little overwhelming at first. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. And I know James will also be happy to help as well. But we're super glad to have you. It's great to have student voices on our committee, and I love that we have two. So fabulous. All right. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Cummings for a district update, please.
All right.
Well, actually, are you going to just go through everything, or are we going to pause in between?
I was planning to pause in between.
Excellent.
All right, so I'm going to start with just a couple slides about district update. I'll start with the ADA grants. We submitted 2 ADA grants on Friday. One is a planning grant that would provide us with a full assessment of ADA compliance and needs for all of our school buildings and the grounds that accompany those buildings. And we also put in for a project grant that project in essence gives us full accessibility at the South Grafton Elementary School playground, which would be fantastic not only for our students during school days, but the community after school, on weekends, anytime school's not in session. I want to give a huge thank you to Roger Trahan. He is the chair of the Disability Commission here in Grafton, and the entire commission was incredibly helpful. Roger in particular helped get all of the documents that I needed. He was just instrumental throughout, and they also provided a letter of support to go with our grant application. So we've got our fingers crossed on that. We've started up GHS athletics. I think it was early last week that we actually officially got going. Things are starting to kind of roll now. I know there are a few games and scrimmages tomorrow, so the weather's supposed to be a little bit better the rest of the week, and it's going to be nice to actually have some games taking place. The mascot committee over at the high school met this morning, and that meeting, out of that meeting came a survey that was put together, I believe, by the committee, and that was shared with the entire GHS community today. I haven't actually seen the survey yet, but I think it's getting some basic feedback on thoughts regarding a new mascot as we move forward. As you know, we had our first COVID case last week. It's over at North Grafton Elementary School. I want to thank Principal Julie Flynn and our nursing coordinator, Jackie Davis. They worked together, did a fantastic job. While you know that we have all of the state protocols in place and tailored to Grafton, the way it works is we have to have those protocols. They're fantastic to have. They're publicized on our website. They've been shared. But what's great is that everything that's done when and if there is even a suspected case, we partner with the Department of Public Health. They essentially have a point person who does work with us as a district, and they make sure they walk us through the process. So that's a great fallback for us, for any district really. So we felt very, very well supported as we navigated that initial case last week, all the communication that was paired with it, all of the actions that had to take place, that it really worked like it was supposed to work. So thank you to Julie and Jackie, and obviously to DPH. We're still waiting on snow day guidance. That was supposed to come out, be released by the state. I think it was 3 weeks ago now. It still hasn't come out. I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that we're not going to be able to have all remote days on what would have been a snow day historically. But for some reason that guidance hasn't come out yet. Superintendents do have a meeting with DESE and the Commissioner of Education on Thursday, and I'm sure that's going to be something that's discussed at that time. But almost daily I'm getting questions about that. And I think we're on track to be able to use those remote days, but that guidance just hasn't been released yet. So in terms of planning, things that we're working on and feedback, they very much go hand in hand. We're working on a lot of different possibilities. Obviously, we don't know better than anybody else how things are going to play out in the coming months. Are things going to get much better in terms of COVID? Are they going to trend in a more negative direction? We don't know. But what we've been trying to do in terms of the leadership team is as much planning as we can for what might be. So with that, we've been working on plans to go all remote if we do need to move in that direction at any time. You've probably seen that throughout the state. I don't know the number, but there have been a fair number of schools, individual schools, in particular high schools, seem to be the most prominent, have had to move to all remote for a couple weeks for a variety of reasons. So we want to be as ready as we possibly can be for that need. With that, we've worked day in and day out on schedules, existing schedules. We're obviously, as we've talked about quite a few times, we are implementing different models that we've never implemented before. We took our best guess in terms of, it reflected our best thinking in terms of what the schedules, the staffing, what all the pieces would look like. And then obviously, since mid-September, we've been running with that, finding out what works, what doesn't work, making modifications. Every day we have been working on schedules to improve upon the different models that we're running with right now. We're also looking at the potential for moving in the other direction, and in particular, looking at the possibility of down the road being able to have full in-person kindergarten and first grade. That level, or those two levels, being our youngest students, that was, I'm sure you remember, back in the summer with the DESE guidance, that was the #1 area of focus. Like, if you could bring anybody back, the state wants us to look at bringing our youngest students back. It makes sense for a number of reasons. One important one is obviously their ability at that age level to learn remotely, to be able to stay focused. They're very understandable and developmentally very appropriate inability to navigate the tech. So the K and first grade students right now are obviously highly, if not completely dependent on a parent, a daycare or a caregiver, grandparent, what have you, to help them navigate that remote piece when they're not in the building. Luckily, those are, even pre-COVID times, those are, at that level, we have our best staffing ratios. So we could bring all students back, have the Remote Learning Academy still available at the K-1 level, and have class sizes of 14, 15, we believe, and still maintain that 3 to 4 foot minimum, or 3 foot minimum, but we think that the distance would be 3 to 4 feet in most cases across both schools. So that's something where we've been looking at for weeks, along with, again, many plans about moving in the other direction. Every single day, there hasn't been a day in months that we haven't worked on potential schedules, potential models, etc. So to that end, we're working on a K-1 survey regarding the possibility of a full return. So not knowing, we obviously need to see how things track, what the trends are with our one case is at the K-1 level, see if that was just an anomaly, one student, or is that some kind of pattern? We're going to find that out soon. But we're planning on surveying the parents of kindergarten and first grade to see if that would be of interest. If not, obviously, we want to know roughly how many parents would be looking to enter into the Remote Learning Academy, how many people currently in the Remote Learning Academy would prefer to go full-time, to basically put out there not a hard and fast commitment, but just to get a sense of what may be to further inform our planning. And then we're also working on a district survey regarding the first 6 weeks. I'm not committing to that, but basically at the end of this month, I'd love to be able to put something out district-wide to get a sense from parents as to what's working, what's not working, and get some real feedback that would be helpful in helping us to improve as we move forward. I started to look to see if other districts nationally had done that. I haven't found any so far, but I didn't look for too awfully long. I'd love to be able to get a sense of what other districts are doing in terms of a survey to gather that kind of information. If it's too open-ended, like the open-ended being like a text box, that's probably the most impactful. But again, if half of our parents fill out the survey and say we have 6 questions, you're looking at 18,000 responses. That's going to be an awful lot of information to wade through. So we're going to take a look at that, but that's one of the trickier surveys to put together, but one that we'll be looking to draft and eventually put out, hopefully sometime in late October. And that's what I have for an update. Any questions in terms of those 2 slides or anything in terms of the update?
Rahul.
I think that's I should agree with that idea of full in-person K1 level thing, because many parents that I spoke with, they had some concerns about their kindergarten kids. They are not able to sit in front of the computer, and plus they were very, they kept asking like, is there a possibility that we can send our kids anytime soon? So I don't have any suggestion to that, but it would be a good idea to have the survey and move forward with that.
Good, thank you.
Amy.
Yeah, so I had a parent ask me today, with sports starting, you said we're starting contests or at least scrimmages this week. Does MIAA have any rules around testing at all? Nothing?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I didn't find anything. Okay.
No.
And is the last day of school now June 18th?
That's correct.
That's Friday.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, this sounds great. I can't wait to see what the parents say about K-1. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, sure. It will be interesting. There are a number of schools that have been able to do that since there'll be K1 or at least K going full in person. The rest of the district, just because of numbers, the same challenges that we face, are going in some version of hybrid. I haven't reached out yet to any of those districts, but I'll be interested to see how it's going. We have, since the first day, been full return in terms of our pre-K program, and that's gone exceedingly well to this point.
Liz.
And we have room to do that at NGES?
We do, correct.
I know there's an extra first grade classroom, I think. Is it just because the classrooms are bigger over there, or?
Yeah, it depends on every school's a little different in terms of their size. The 2 newer schools for us being Millbury Street and the high school obviously they have the largest rooms. Like you walk in, they're all the same. At least at Millbury Street, they're all basically the same size. You don't have as many kind of nooks and crannies and odd shaped classrooms as you do at the older schools.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this is the numbers would be dependent on obviously how many students remained or are enrolled in the remote learning academy. But we would have space, and we would be topping out. I think 15 would be with 15, we can easily make the 3-foot distancing. And our parents comfortable with that, and we're going to find out.
Mm-hmm. My other question was, I can't remember if you've told us this before, but who is on the mascot committee at the high school? Is it a mix of students and faculty?
I believe so. I can get the list. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay.
Or James, do you guys happen to know?
I don't know, no.
Okay. Just wondering if it was, certain positions that were put on it and how students might have been selected.
I thought it was I thought he put out a volunteer.
He did. I don't know if they had so many volunteers that they had to make decisions. I can find that out for sure tomorrow.
Jen?
Sort of going along with Liz's question about room, is there room on the buses for it?
There is.
Okay.
That where K1 in every way is an anomaly in a good way in terms of spacing. So we have all of our 17 buses go at the end of our routes, go down to South Grafton, North Grafton Elementary School for 2 grades worth of students. That's the only level that we could make it work, and it works fairly easily.
Liz?
As it seems we have room, and for both, why, I'm curious, why didn't we try to have full in-person from the beginning? For both
We
levels?
didn't know how much movement we'd have, number one.
Mhm.
That was probably the biggest thing, is not knowing who would be coming in, going out. It does put us, we're generally over 3 feet across the board. So this, if we were to move forward in this direction in the future, we would be to that minimum 3-foot distancing, which I think there's possibly a lot more comfort around that now that we're up and running than there was back in August, early September, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? And Jay, obviously, so lunch, cafeteria would be good. I think they're what, 2 to a table? Would they still be able to be, would we have to add extra lunches, or would it be 1 to a table, or?
It would depend on how many students returned. And that would be, and again, this is, if it's, we're just feeling it out. This is one of the different plans going forward. I just want to be clear about that. But if we were to do it and say, let's just pretend that the RLA numbers, the Remote Learning Academy, drop significantly, then we might look at, instead of 2 lunches, have 4 lunches, something like that, if needed. That would be the fallback, if you will. Odds are that we're going to, assuming that's not going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, we'd be okay with lunches as is.
And then what about for RLA, if parents were happy with the hybrid, were uncomfortable going full-time, and then wanted to move to hybrid, would we be able, I know that's kind of a question you can't answer because you don't know the numbers, but would a lot of movement towards RLA change this plan because we don't have the staff?
No, if it was, it's almost 2 questions in there, or maybe I misunderstood you. So there won't be, if we were to do this, and again, giant if in the future we were to do this, we could not, staffing wise, have full in-person, have hybrid, and have Remote Learning Academy. It would be full in-person or Remote Learning Academy at that level. What was the second part, Laura? Sorry.
Well, my second part was more that if they change from hybrid to remote learning, like they're not comfortable with the 3 feet apart or more kids in the class or whatever and then a large amount go to RLA.
Yep, we would shift, we would have fewer classes in person and shift that staffing. That's currently basically the extra staff, if you will, once you move away from hybrid, are those hybrid remote teachers. So depending on what model was chosen, that's how we would therefore allocate those people accordingly.
Okay, great, thanks. And then I just had one more question about the survey for the district. I think that's a great idea. I know that was something we talked about in the summer about getting feedback. As you mentioned, though, I am concerned about the amount of data that might bring back and the time that it's going to take away from somebody, either you or Tracy, who's already kind of maxed. If there's any way we can help to sort at least or analyze, I'm happy to help with that.
Okay. Great.
I'm sure other members would be too, Amy. So just keep us in mind, because that exactly what you said, of half the people, that could be thousands of surveys that we now have to analyze, and so just let us know.
Okay.
But this is great news, and I'm excited about the possibility of being able to bring kids back full time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Next up, your goals.
All right, so I drafted 3 goals for your consideration today. I'm just presenting the draft. I'll obviously take any feedback that the committee has either tonight or over the next couple of weeks, apply that feedback and put before you a finalized set of goals probably at the next meeting. And then the way it works is January, February, I'll do basically a mid-year report on progress made or not made, get feedback again as to how to move forward more effectively. And then towards the end of the year, April, generally early May. My final report goes to the committee for consideration with my evaluation. So that first draft goal is to ensure that instructional practices in all settings reflect high expectations, engagement of all students, and are personalized to accommodate diverse learning styles, needs, and levels of readiness. This one is definitely in all of my goals are obviously in partnership with other people. This one is largely in partnership with Tracy, Kalo, and the principals. We'll be looking to provide feedback, and it's a different kind of feedback, and it's just looks and feels differently this year, and coaching in the same manner. How can we most effectively do that with our staff, with the different models in place this year? How do we provide for strong standards-based units across all settings? Earlier we were talking about first grade and kindergarten. For now, a big chunk of what we're doing is doing that remotely, and that's exceedingly difficult. So that's a huge challenge for us. And then, as I think we've done beautifully, largely thanks to Tracy's hard work over the summer and late spring, was continuing our work to strengthen the digital literacy of our staff. Our staff is doing some fantastic things already remotely. Be it hybrid or remote learning academy, and we want to continue to support and strengthen that as we move forward. So that's the first goal. I have three in total. The second goal is to develop and execute effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address the safety, health, and social emotional needs of students. The first piece of this is ensuring that we have healthy environments, so like the physical buildings, be it PPE, our cleaning regimen, our protocols, all of the different pieces that are focused on the actual physical health, safety, and well-being of our students and staff. Then support systems. We've worked really hard over the past few years to develop great social emotional supports for students and families. Now applying those systems or modifying those systems to work in the remote setting is a huge challenge for us, even in the hybrid where, again, it's that half and half piece. It's really significantly more challenging to catch those needs and then address those needs in the current system. So that's the challenge there. Scheduling, I talked about that a little bit earlier. How do we maximize the staffing that we have with the certifications, with the different models in place? Scheduling, again, is something we're doing day in, day out to make the very best of what we have available to us. And then lastly, feedback, which we've touched on. How can we, on an ongoing basis, get meaningful feedback from students, from parents, from community members, and from staff in terms of what's working, what's not working well, and what can we do to improve upon it? And that's going to be that's incredibly important, but it's a real challenge to do that in a meaningful way and not just drown in data. It's relatively easy just to ask for the feedback. The hard part is being able to organize that feedback in a meaningful way and then take actions to actually make improvements. And then finally, implement draft goal number 3 was to implement a cohesive approach to recruitment, hiring, induction, and support of staff. This is going to be in large part tied to the work that Kristen Gasper's doing and doing brilliantly. We've done more hiring than we've ever done in the past 10 years, for sure. Part of this will be working with the Grafton Teachers Association, using DESE guidance to streamline our evaluation system. Obviously, that's a very complex and comprehensive system. There's a lot of parts. Now applying that system with all of the different models at hand is going to be a huge challenge. Looking at those flexible staffing structures, we've, I think, done exceedingly well working with staff with complex schedules, again, jumping between models, dealing with health issues, all of the different challenges at hand to make it all work. And again, Kristen's been fantastic in this effort, and it's certainly something that we're going to have to continue throughout the year. And lastly, modify the induction and mentoring programs. Again, over the past 5 or 6 years, we've built up an induction and mentoring program for new staff that I'd put up against anybody's. This year, we've got challenges that we've simply never had to face before. So how do we modify those programs in a way that's going to be equally effective is a monumental task for us, but one that's absolutely critical for the success of our staff and students for the entire year and potentially into next year. So those are my 3 draft goals, and I can take any feedback you might have. And in that drive folder, obviously, this is just an overview. I gave the actual goals with benchmarks and the total list of key actions associated with each.
Well, Jay, thank you. These are our lofty goals, for sure. And I have to say, I appreciate your commitment to excellence in a year that's so unlike another year, to really be committed into making sure our staff is getting what they need, as well as our students. So I appreciate that a lot. And I know that you have a great team with you to try to help meet these goals. So thank you.
All right. So
I don't see any other.
So if anybody does have feedback, obviously, if you can provide that to me over the next couple of weeks, I'll build that into my finalized goals. All right. You want me to keep going, Laura?
Keep going. I was excited because the dog came in.
All right.
Sorry.
You have a dog.
That's Dublin.
Hi, Dublin. All right. Go ahead, Jay.
All right. So capital update. This is something we talked about pre-COVID for maybe 3 or 4 times at different meetings. So we're finally coming back to it today. We've got some new members here, so I'm going to try to provide an update in a very basic sense and hopefully get everybody up on the same page. I want to start by making sure to recognize and thank our prior Director of Finance, Dan Gale. He was instrumental in working with myself and Tony LeMay last year as we looked for different ways to approach capital in the future. Since Stan left, Anita came in and she just hit the ground running, and she's been absolutely fantastic with all things capital and in the discussions with Train. So thank you to them. So when we talk about our facilities, we have 6 schools. The oldest is North Grafton Elementary School, and the newest is Grafton High School. In total, we have 611,000 square feet. That's a lot of space and a lot of capital projects. Just having the small projects are somewhat overwhelming. Small being, let's think of things under $60,000, $70,000 a year. So at your house, the smaller things, you have to replace the dishwasher, you have to paint something, fix something on the floor. Those bigger projects we struggle with district-wide to really get to, and I'll explain that. But when you look at our 5-year capital plan, you'll see that there are a number of larger projects that we talk about every year, and they're great discussions, but we never get to them. So we've got that 5-year capital plan. We've been doing that for probably 8 years now. That plan is definitely disconnected from funding realities. I don't think it's anybody's fault, but it's real, in that we have millions of dollars of need to, again, take care of 100,000 square feet. That's a lot of space. When each year we receive, typically in the spring, sometimes later in the spring, we receive a figure for capital funding. That number typically, or that figure, ranges from 200,000 to about 500,000 each year. So we go through CIPC, the town administrator's office. We make a pitch for here are all of our projects. We prioritize those projects, and we receive funding, again, between 200 and 500,000 typically in the spring. We then have to move pretty quickly to line up those relatively small projects to be done or completed during the summer. So we don't have time to really ramp up. That lends itself to us picking, again, those smaller scope projects, be it paving, flooring at the different buildings. We've done some accessibility projects, and that's due in part because of the funding. If we have $200,000 to $500,000, we're not going to spend all of it on one big project. We're better off in terms of functioning on a year-to-year basis, getting a bunch of the smaller projects done. We continue to push off the larger projects. And again, that timing, even if we were going to 1 year in the spring, say we wanted to do a larger project, there's almost no chance that timing-wise it would work where we could get that work done just a few months after getting that funding. So it's set up in this way, again, of no fault of anybody's, but set up in a way that we're constantly getting a few of the smaller projects done every year and not addressing the larger needs. Those larger needs in particular include heating and ventilation systems at all of the schools. Obviously at the high school, we're in the best shape in that school came on board in 2012. When we talk about the heating and ventilation systems, only the high school has air conditioning and the most updated ventilation systems with the most updated filter systems, et cetera, which obviously in a pandemic is an area of a focus and need. And then the other one is windows at North Street Elementary School. I'll talk about it in a second, but we did go through an MSBA process about 1.5 years ago, where we actually were put in for and received a grant to move forward with windows at North Street. The town ultimately decided not to pursue the cost of those new windows at North Street. I'll talk about that in a second. And then new roofs, those are big projects, obviously. Our greatest needs are at North Street Elementary School and South Grafton Elementary School. Neither one is failing, but we will definitely need new roofs in the coming 10 years. Those are complete roofing systems that would need to be put on. At the middle school in North Street Elementary School, there are portions of the roof that are also going to need to be replaced in the coming decade. So when we pursued that MSBA grant program, we were having basically this conversation that we can never get to the big projects. The windows at North Street Elementary School include 190 windows. If you've been up at the school, or you potentially, if you were paying attention about 1.5 years ago when we went through the process, we made some videos. We showed a lot of pictures of water coming in through the windows. They're drafty is an understatement. They don't close properly. They don't all open. They're failing windows. There's no two ways around it. So we did pursue it through that grant program. Again, it was accepted. We were moving forward, and there was a large cost, and just with a bunch of things going on in town, the decision was made not to pursue it. So after that experience, we then took a step back and said, okay, our large scale capital projects, obviously none have gone away. If anything, that list is growing every year. What other approaches could we possibly take? It was at that time that we went to the committee for your consideration for approval of an energy performance audit last year. We went through that process. It was approved. We went through that process. We contracted with Train. The audit was completed in the fall of 2020. And then they came and made a presentation to myself, Anita, and Tony LeMay a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So tonight, I'm going to just go over the basic overview of what they found and that approach. We reached out to CIPC, Capital Improvement Planning Committee, and asked to give them a quick presentation on the possibility of the program. That's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And we're looking to them for input and guidance. I don't know if this is something the town wants to consider or not, or if the school committee wants to consider or not. But we've certainly done our due diligence and think it's certainly worthy of at least having a discussion and not waiting until May or until, later down the road. Have the discussion early, and if it seems to be of interest, I'd like to know that on the earlier side and bring Train in, have them present and be able to kind of dive into it, but do so together as opposed to kind of the way it's been traditionally done where, say, the schools have a project, be it the windows, it's our project, MSBA is tied to it. Once it's developed, then talk to CIPC about it and other boards. I'd much rather this time around talk to any boards who are interested on the very early side, and again, get that feedback, see if it's a good idea and approach it in partnership as opposed to one group's project versus another group's project. So that's the intent. All right, so for Train's audit, they came in and they looked at everything. What we are most interested in initially are the projects before you. The only significant projects that we took off of the list of potential projects to be completed were the roof projects. And that is because the costs go up exponentially once you include the roofing. The energy performance projects or contracts are based on the thought that in part, once you do these projects, you're going to spend less money moving forward on utilities. So monies that if we don't do a project, they label them as savings, which I find can be confusing to people. They take those savings, if you will, or monies that would have been spent on energy costs, which they will guarantee. You pair those monies with capital funds over the course of typically 20 years to get a large number of significant projects completed. If we were to add in the roofing projects, those don't have that, they don't have a very high level of return in terms of the energy savings, if you will. But they have high cost and they're needed. Our thinking was for this discussion, we took the roofing out, thinking that if we move forward with roofing, we could do that through MSBA, we could do it through Train or another company in the future, but we were probably best off thinking of the roofing projects as a standalone group of projects. So you can see in green, the green indicates the school and the project that would be included. So we don't need new heating boiler plants at the high school, the middle school, or North Grafton because we have put new ones in high school when it was built, in middle school in North Grafton over the past 5 years. Obviously, GHS doesn't need new HVAC equipment. If we were to move forward with this project and included the new HVAC equipment, we'd have air conditioning at all of the schools. New controls, new lighting throughout each building, sealing up the building envelope around each school, obviously saves a great deal of money in terms of energy costs, getting new walk-in freezer controls, kitchen hood controls, new ventilation systems at Millbury Street, North Street, and South Grafton Elementary, and then the new windows at North Street. So when I talk about the numbers, it includes everything that's outlined on this page. I want to be really clear that this isn't an all or nothing proposal. Like as we move forward, if this is of interest, we can take any of these things off. You could do 2 of these projects. You could do, again, all of them. You could do all of them and add back the roofing. this is just one scenario in which we have chosen the projects that seem to make the most sense to myself, Anita, and to Tony LeMay. All right, in terms of costs, I only, for the purpose of this slide, just pulled out the first 5 years. The numbers, once you get to year 5 and beyond, the numbers basically stay the same. The annual savings in terms of the energy, so again, the guaranteed savings, which is the monies that would have been allocated and spent on inefficient utility costs, are captured up top. Those continue to grow over the 20 years. And so if you take out year one is a little deceptive, or it's very deceptive, but nobody's fault, in that in year one, we benefit by having a utility rebate. That's for 1 year. So the district doing these projects receives $322,000 for utility rebates, which is fantastic. Going forward, you don't get that rebate every year. So in the green, that is the amount of annual, what they call savings. And again, that's monies that aren't going to be spent on utilities. So monies that we currently would encumber for energy is going to decrease by that amount going forward, and Train guarantees that. Down in the next to the last row in parentheses, that number is what would have to be spent from capital or by the town. So we'd have that 263 up top. That's obviously still spending, don't get me wrong, but out of capital would be what's in parentheses. So roughly in year 2, about half of the $506,000 that would go to the project, if we were to do all of them, about half of it would come from that, the savings from the unencumbered or the unspent monies for utilities. And then on the next to bottom row, the 243 would come from, I would assume, capital. And you would move forward for 20 years with that model in mind. What I provided in the full document to CIPC and to the school committee obviously lays out those numbers over the course of the 20 years. So this is just the 5-year snapshot. And that might be it for slides. Nope, additional information. If we were to move forward, I have no idea if we are going to be supported by school committee and or CIPC or the town. But if we did, the projects could be completed in the summer of 2021. All schools at that point, if we did all of these projects, would be equipped with air conditioning and updated ventilation systems. As I mentioned before, projects can be added and removed as needed. If future roofing projects are pursued, they are paired with solar, so there's some offset with the solar, but the solar by no means pays for the roofing project. And as I mentioned earlier, Train is very much available to present and speak to specifics if the committee and or the town is interested in moving forward in this approach, with this approach in the future. And with that, I can take any questions you might have.
Well, I'll take it. Oh, Liz, go ahead.
I think, not really a question, just, I guess a statement of support. I know these projects have been sitting on the list for a long time. And I think especially the new HVAC systems in the schools that need them, like you said, especially now with COVID, but I'm happy to see this plan and the energy savings that we can use to subsidize the cost of this. And I'm really excited to see this hopefully move forward so that we can start to make a dent in these capital projects with at the schools.
Amy?
Yeah, Jen actually had her hand up first. Can we unscreen share so we can see everybody?
I can see, I just called on you first, Amy. It's
Oh,
fine.
there we go. No, I just wanted to see everybody. I agree with what Liz just said, that this is exciting and I'm happy to see a plan. I know we talked about it a few times and there didn't seem to be a way to get this work done when we're only getting 200 to, and I think 500,000 is pretty generous for our capital allocation at this point. And I'm excited to see what CIPC has to say about it. So I support this.
Jen?
Can you send, would you be willing to share with us the rest of that spreadsheet? Just, I'd like to see where that comes out to in 20 years. And we can just extend that and share it with us later.
Yes, it's in that, I think it's in the drive folder.
Okay, so okay, I can find it.
If not, I'll reshare it for sure.
I'd like to see, yeah, so with all that being said, I would like to see Train. I don't know if anyone else would, but I'd like to hear them present.
Yeah, I'd be open to hearing Train. I'm wondering if once we talk to CIPC tomorrow, if we could maybe do a one presentation so they don't have to do it twice, but or we can record it and share it. I'm in full support of this. I applaud the creativity. Capital projects have been so hard to get accomplished. Bringing up the windows, I could feel my blood pressure rising. I'm grateful that we were able to do what we could do before this year because we couldn't even open the windows and at least we were able to do some repair. I don't know how we would have been able to have school there this year. So I see you, Amy. When I'm finished, I'll call on you. So I'm 100% support and I think we should move forward. Amy?
I had a question about what actually was done at North and what the lifespan of that was. Like, what's the lifespan of it? Well, my understanding is that we replaced some blinds. The windows were repaired, but not fully. And I don't know what the expected life of it is.
I can jump in, Jay. You can supplement me, but we were able to put screens in the windows, which none of the windows beforehand were in. We were able to clean up some of the, I don't know what it's called.
Caulking and
The caulking, thank you.
And the actual hardware on the windows.
So it was a repair, not a fix. But it was it made a big difference because we could at least open the windows.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Which we couldn't.
But the windows themselves have surpassed their expected life. Is that correct?
There's
We're
no,
well past that at this point. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of our buildings, if you go back to that first slide where you put the dates of all our buildings, I mean, if you go through, they're years old and there haven't been many updates. And even the high school, we talk about it. I mean, it's going to be 10 years old in a couple of years, like things start to happen. So I think it's important to be able to fund our capital. And this seems like a really good, at least a plan finally on how to fund it. Otherwise, it goes to bonding, or we have to go to a special town, ask for a special warrant and they bond and we have to convince the select board. And in our case that we didn't make our case for the windows, even though we had 50% of it matched. So it's a good solution. I'm over the windows, I swear. All right, any other questions? But I do think, yeah, I'd love to get Train in so we can see what happens tomorrow night and what next steps are after you present, you and Anita. Okay, awesome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, future agenda schedule planning. So 2 weeks ago. Oh.
Sorry, I'm a late question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Going back, Liz Stinney.
I was slow to get off mute. Is there any if we do move forward with all this construction? I know maybe this is a long time off and maybe it won't be a problem by then, but is there any concern that we won't be able to, that we can't do it safely with having, I know we've been trying to keep visitors out. I suppose, you know, of course they would be wearing masks and everything, but is there any concern there?
If we did move forward relatively quickly, it would be completed over the summer without, I don't think anything inside would be done when school's in session.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Last call. We can always go back. So I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when we last met, we were supposed to have the CPAC officers had requested to come in for this meeting after they finally had their meeting last, I believe it was Thursday. I reached out and the new chairs, Gloria and Heather, asked if we could push it back to our next meeting. So I know we talked about it. I don't want you to think that they were left off the agenda. So they'll be on future agenda planning. The chair of the select board, Peter Carlson, reached out to myself and Mark Haddad about having a TRICOM meeting for the budget and talking about budget planning, which is great. I really appreciated to get a jump on it. Finance committee requested that we not do it as part of another meeting, I think like we did last year. So Tuesdays are out, and there was a request for either Wednesdays or Thursdays, and they wanted it after town meeting, which at this point is a moot point. So I'll send out a Google Doodle, or not, I don't think it is a Google Doodle, a doodle tonight with dates, and we can fill in what are best. I know, especially Amy and Liz, I think you guys have a lot of meetings, so we'll work around those, I hope, and be able to get a date on the calendar for everybody. So those are 2 upcoming things. Jay also shared kind of, it's a shell of the upcoming topics that we would talk about for each meeting, and we can fill in as we go. It's in the drive. Any additions? Jen?
And it has the remote Zoom through October 27th. Does that mean we're starting to think about going in person, or that's just a pause?
I think when I did that, it was a couple weeks ago, and or it was a month ago. So really, I mean, for me, when I did kind of a survey of the committee, not everybody was comfortable going back. When Jay and I went in to try to fill it out or try to feel out how to do it, because we still can't have as many people come. So we still have to Zoom. We'd have to monitor questions. I think when we did that, we were pretty much, I think we should stick with remote. And so that was just old notes on my part. I didn't know Jay was going to upload to the meeting. I mean, and we can start again. I mean, it was difficult when we went in and met to try to figure out, when I think about who our meetings are for and how to get accessibility to people, I think this is a decent way to do it. I mean, I'd love to go back into person. Rahul and Liz have never been in an in-person meeting, but I think we're functioning well. We've had more attendance than we've ever had before. We're able to get the questions. So I haven't seen a change. And I know we were talking, we have our teachers in buildings and we want to be good role models. But I think for what we do, it's okay to be in Zoom. But I'm open, I'll do whatever. Liz?
No, I agree, Laura. I think this is, at our last meeting, we had over 100 people watching. And I think with everything going on this year and the changes that might occur in the future and making sure that people are aware of them and that they're able to, I think having accessibility to our meetings in this format is the way to go. So I don't think it's as much about us being in a room together as it is about that.
Yeah. And I feel like we've still been able to do amazing work. We've gotten a lot accomplished meeting up remotely. So I think a lot of it was not, I don't want to dismiss the optics, but for me, it wasn't about safety. I feel perfectly safe, but it was about just being accessible to people. And it really went, and Bob and Jack did an amazing job trying to walk us through and how we could do it. We were going to have people dial in. So I'd be managing the phone. We'd have Amy like on Zoom managing questions, but we'd also be on cable. People wouldn't be able to watch on Zoom, so they'd tune into cable, but they'd watch on Zoom for questions. It was like, it seemed a little much when we have Zoom. So, but yeah, but it was a typo, or not a typo. It was me being optimistic when I worked on that document. That was a long answer. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you ever think of anything, reach out and Jay and I will see what we can do. And we have a 2 minutes available for approval. Jen, I can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
Someone else.
Oh, now we heard that. Someone else.
Oh. All right, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the September 22nd, 2020 meetings as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote. Jennifer Conley? Jen, I couldn't hear you. Jennifer Conley, aye. Amy Marr?
Amy Marr, aye.
Liz Spinney?
Aye.
Rahul Rati?
Aye.
Laura Often, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Can somebody make a motion for the next minutes? Maybe not Jen. Sorry.
I move to approve the September 30th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Jennifer Conley? Jennifer Conley, aye. I mean, we will abstain, I guess. Liz Spinney?
Aye.
Amy Marr?
Amy Marr, aye.
Rahul Rati?
Alrighty, aye.
All right, motion, Laura Often, aye. So, well, I guess, I don't know. Now I'm like, Amy, do you know what happens if their technology fails during a
If she just wait a
non?
minute after she unmutes, so you can hear her. So maybe she should just, oh, maybe it's not working now. But I did notice before, I saw one group do it in the chat. She can abstain or she can give a thumbs up and we could say, let the record show.
That's what it is. It's let the record show. All right, let the record show. Jen Conley approves the minutes. So motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Amy. I was looking for the wording. As after I was bragging about how well our remote meetings have gone. We have a financial report, a warrant.
I move the school committee approve warrant number 15 dated October 8th, 2020 in the amount of $643,939.03.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Jennifer Conley. Motion, let the record show Jennifer Conley voted aye. Amy Marr?
Amy Marr, aye.
Liz Spinney?
Aye.
Rahul Rati?
Alrighty, aye.
Laura Often, aye. Motion carries 5-0. We do not have any policy tonight. Member reports. Any updates from anybody? Liz?
Not really an update, just that we have a meeting of the TA screening committee tomorrow. We sent out a survey a little while ago, so I hope people who wanted to respond were able to do that. And I can report what I can that is not an executive session at the next school committee meeting.
Great, thank you. That survey was a great idea. It's very easy to use, so thank you for putting that together. Anybody else? Amy?
As previously mentioned, CIPC meets tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. I believe the agenda says 7, but it's really going to be 8. And I believe the train item is on the list of things we're talking about. And as a reminder, town meeting, we're trying to pass the CIPC bylaw change so we can actually do the good work that we need to be doing. So I encourage everybody to come if you feel safe, socially distance, wear masks, and vote. Thank you.
And James and Annabelle, do you have anything, any updates? James?
I had a couple things, yeah. So today during our mask break, we couldn't go outside because of the obvious, because it was raining and stuff. So some classes went to the commons and some just didn't take any breaks. So do we have a plan for that in the future as to what to do, because the winter months are coming and we're not going to be able to go outside?
I will defer to Mr. Pignataro. He certainly talked about it, be it the use of the gymnasium, the commons, et cetera. So there's certainly been discussion of a plan. I can speak to him tomorrow and make sure that he shares that plan once it's finalized.
Thank you. And someone asked me today, what's the status on outdoor classrooms? Is that something that we'll be doing before winter?
It's a fantastic question. I think we now have the permitting. I think we were waiting on the fire department for the tents, and this goes not only for the high school, for all over the place. The pace we're going, it's going to be close. They're up at the high school, and they're not up everywhere. So that's definitely been a slow challenge. But if we pull it off anywhere, my guess is it's going to be at the high school.
Thank you.
Amy, I think we have a question from the audience related to Liz's update.
We do. Yeah, Liz, do you want to go ahead and take that?
Can you read it to her? Just
What would be an executive session relative to the TA search committee?
That would be any discussions about somebody's personal resume. Those personal details would be discussed in executive session and not in a public meeting. So we'll be getting and reviewing resumes sent through the search firm, and any information within those, any discussions will be in executive session.
Thanks, Liz. All right, any other updates? Okay, and correspondence, the entire committee received 2 letters from unhappy parents regarding our move to the half days. I responded to both of them, thanking them for their feedback, and we've all seen the letters. We'll include them in the minutes, so they'll be on the record. And we did see a lot of feedback online as well regarding that decision. And we do appreciate people's flexibility with the change and understanding that we need to support our teachers in this at this time. So I don't think we have to go to executive session. So I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Jennifer Conley. Jennifer Conley says aye. Amy Moore.
Aye.
Liz Spinney.
Aye.
Rahul Retief.
All right, aye.
Laura Austin. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Welcome, Annabelle. You made it through your first meeting. We're glad to have you. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.